All right. Good morning, Buckeyes. Let's go ahead and get started. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and see me. Make sure we're all set. All right. I appreciate it. I thought it was really funny. I was watching Dave Matthews' Verizon concert that he played. And basically, he was just playing his guitar, apparently above his garage, like totally like Dave Matthews Band like. And if you guys want to know what it's like to be a professor, an instructor right now, like working with students like you guys, watch his video. He's hysterical because like I hope you guys are out there. I have no idea if you're out there. If you're out there, I hope you're good. I have no idea if you're good. If you got other things to do, it's okay. You can go. You can come back if you want. You don't have to stay. But like, I'm not even giving it justice because like Dave Matthews has like his own way of like being goofy. And so that's what it kind of feels like. You guys do a great job of giving me feedback. Let me know you're there. But sometimes really funny because I was walking around doing the same thing as if I was an instructor. To Katie, I was saying like, yeah, we're gonna learn about social psychology. Hopefully you dig it. Hopefully I do it right. If not, there's other instructors out there. They're really good at this. They can do it. So yeah, if you get a chance, it was good music. It was lots of fun, and then he's just hysterical talking about how it's so weird to be basically playing in front of a mirror of himself rather than crowds of thousands and thousands, all these big venues. So it's a big change of pace for him. It was kind of entertaining. So with that being said, I want to get us into things. We have two pieces to work on today. One is to finish off talking about the defense to social influence tactics. So I want to just get through that quickly, but it's important to have this information. It kind of rounds out our lecture here. And then I want to talk about groups, which is my area of expertise. And I must admit, I'm kind of torn because we got kind of shortchanged with time between these two. And I want to make sure to spend less time with social influence techniques because they're really interesting. They happen all the time. But some of the group behavior we'll talk about today is super, super relevant to things going on with the coronavirus around us, the group behavior that we have, the kind of larger societal and world group that we've now kind of formed. So let's jump into it. Before we fully get into it, I want to just quickly run through what's going to happen for our exam. So as you guys know, we do have an exam coming up on Thursday. It's our third exam. Let me explain how this is going to work, walk you through it, make sure that you're all set. I'll give you guys time to ask any questions you have, make sure that we're good to go. So the exam will be the same format as our previous exam. So I'm not switching up anything in that regards. It'll be the same 50 multiple choice questions with a greater emphasis on application of the questions, exactly like you guys have been doing. So, be prepared for that. Continue to kind of study for it to be that same format. I didn't want to switch things up too much on you. What I'll do is I'll release the exam about this time tomorrow. So I'll release about 8 o'clock on Wednesday, April 1st. So that's when the exam itself is going to be available. I have it written. I just need to make some last tweaks depending upon what we talk about today. So again, I'll release the exam on Carmen around 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Now, what you can do with that is you can go ahead and download the exam. So you don't have to open up the exam and keep it open or anything like that. If you need to just drive to McDonald's in your car, download it, and go home, you can absolutely do that. It's set up to be kind of very minimal internet usage in this case. So basically, anytime after about 8 o'clock tomorrow, you can go download the exam. It's all set, and it's going to be waiting for you there. Okay, so once you've downloaded the exam, what you're going to need to do is go ahead and return your answer sheet, so just your answer sheet to Dropbox, and you need to do that by 9:20 on Thursday. So basically, had we been normally having class, you would have finished the exam by 9:20. So we're gonna do the same exact rules here. So that's when it's officially due. There's really no late acceptances, although I will understand, if you need to explain to me something going on, you have internet issues, things like that, I am aware of what's going on. So contact me if you run into problems. In this case, again, you just need to upload your answer sheet. So you'll just give me the answers that you have there. What I want to make super clear for you guys is that during the class time that we normally have, I will be available live to clarify any exam questions that you have. So I will be in the Zoom classroom just like I am now. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have then. I'll be live. I'll be happy to walk things through with you. I'm also happy to answer any questions through email as well. So just realize that there's a little bit of a lag. But if there's something where you want to make sure that you can ask me a question live, I will make sure to be there in class on Thursday. There is no official class. There's no lecture on Thursday, but I will be there to answer any questions you have about the exam. Or if there's something else going on that you want to check in with me about, anything like that, I'm happy to help out at that point. So with that being said, any questions about the exam? So do me a favor, if you're good to go, send me a message in chat. jump in, things like that, let me pause for just a moment because I'll make sure that we're super set with what's going on with the exam, since it's a little trickier since I won't see you guys while you're working on it. Okay, so any questions you have, you're good to go. Let me know. Appreciate you guys checking in.
Is our answer sheet just going to be like something that we just type up? Like we just type into a document?
Yeah, so sorry, I missed a little bit of your first question because I didn't have the audio turned up all the way. My bad on that. But yeah, you're just going to type in your answers. You'll just see it's an answer. It's basically just a table. You just need to put the letter next to the number for the question.
Oh, but you give us the answer sheet that you want us to type on?
Yeah, it's there. It's going to be part of the exam.
Okay.
So you'll see that basically there's just the front page for the exam, like there normally is with the instructions, making sure you're clear. You can only use your lecture book and anything on Carmen to take the exam. And then the second page you'll see is the answer sheet itself. Yeah, so it's there for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for asking that question. Okay, other questions? Again, I want to make sure you guys are super set. Okay, so looks like we're good. If not, Steph, definitely stop me. You can email me if you have questions. But let's go ahead and jump into lecture, picking up where we left off on talking about the defense to these tactics. So again, part of the reason why I love this lecture is that you guys get your money back directly on the class for this, and it's so applicable. One of the ways that you can get your money back, you can understand how to defend against yourself from these social influence tactics, is to understand them and understand the ways that we can defend against them. So what again we'll do is we'll spend just a little bit of time reviewing those things that we talked about for resisting persuasion, and I'll talk just about for 2 slides about kind of other pieces to make sure that you have as well. So when we talk about resisting persuasion, one of the biggest pieces to this is that it takes effort, knowledge, and ability to critically analyze the messages. So any recommendation I have for resisting that persuasion, keep in mind it does take these 3 components. When you're worn down, when you're tired, when you're struggling with other things, those persuasion techniques are more influential. And so it's harder because that effort's not necessarily there, not because you don't want to put effort towards it, but you just don't have those resources. And that's where we talked about kind of wearing people down, making them more persuasive. The knowledge base, both in terms of what you know about that topic, but also the knowledge of influence tactics, and also the ability to critically analyze these messages. So sometimes we just don't have time to do this, or we're not focused on analyzing messages. We're not in that mindset. But we can talk about some of the ways that we can resist persuasion in terms of kind of larger techniques. So the first of these we'll talk about, or kind of remind you about, is inoculation. And inoculation, again, is building up reserves of counter arguments. So the idea here is that someone might be making an argument. You don't want to succumb to that argument. You don't want to agree to it. So you come up with kind of counter arguments, things that you might say against this. So the example I gave you guys was smoking behavior. So, you can teach kids at a younger age all these different arguments that they can have if someone approaches them trying to get them to smoke or do other drugs about why it's a bad idea. Okay, so that's one piece that we can see. Another one that we talked about briefly was this idea of forewarning. So someone remind me what the idea is with forewarning as it relates to resisting persuasion. Okay, and you can type it out, you can jump in with audio, whatever is kind of best for you, whatever's most convenient. Okay, so remind me again what forewarning is.
I think it's like if you know someone is trying to persuade you, you'll recognize it happening, and then you can also like avoid it because if you know that they're going to persuade you, you can avoid it.
Okay, so that's the perfect piece of that, especially that last piece. You got the right idea where if you know that influence tactic is going to be used, if you're forewarned, that means exactly you're forearmed. You're able to then be aware it's going to be happening, kind of build up some resources, start to develop some knowledge so that you're not going to be influenced by this. We talked about this in terms of the idea of comprehensive senior exams. If you know that someone's going to try to convince you that this is going to be a good idea, if you're forewarned beforehand, you're less likely to then be influenced by it, to agree to it, compared to if someone just kind of springs this message on you. So again, this is something we're going to keep in mind. If you're going to go into a situation where you're going to be persuaded, you can kind of forearm yourself a little bit and kind of be aware of the tactics that might be used against you. So great answer there. Okay. Going along with looking for answers here, someone kind of share with me the overall idea behind this poison parasites. Okay, so what is the overall kind of thinking, the idea behind poison parasite, and how you can defend against persuasive messages? Okay, this one's a little trickier, but I think we covered it well. I think you guys can kind of see from the visual and the description here, kind of the overarching idea?
So I think it's having strong counter arguments. So like having those arguments ready. When somebody brings, like with the smoking, if someone's like, hey, have a cigarette, you can be like, well, it causes impotence or it kills other people with secondhand smoke.
Okay, so perfect. You've got it. You described well, brought in the example here, so even better. This idea that when someone's going to give you an argument, you instantly have a retrieval cue, something that counters that argument right away, and it's already kind of prepped in your mind. So, the idea here is that someone's going to say, smoking looks great, here's the Marlboro Man, but, think about all the negative consequences of this. It causes impotence, secondhand smoke kills. Someone's going to try to get you to buy a particular car, keep a retrieval cue in mind of, the past article that you read about that car showing that, here are the concerns with it. Here are the things to be mindful of. Okay, so nicely done in terms of explaining those two. Again, that's what's helpful for understanding these tactics and how to defend against them. It's also what's important for, the basics of getting ready for the exam. Here's the last piece I wanted to make sure that you spent just a little bit of time covering why we want to come back to this especially. Okay. So I can give you specific things that you can do to resist against some of the different weapons of influence that we started with that we've been focusing on. Okay. So the first of this is thinking about commitment and consistency and how you can defend against this. And the idea here is that you don't need to feel obligated. So if someone sets you up with a particular behavior, they're trying to get you to do that, and you want to stay consistent, you want to stay committed to that behavior, that's what we naturally want to do. But don't feel obligated to do this. And one of the ways that you can defend against this is ask the question, would you make that same decision again? So your roommate asks you for a little bit of extra help with, the rent. Maybe they say, hey, can you cover some smaller utility, and you agree to that. And then finally, you find yourself kind of almost covering their entire rent for a month. The idea there is take a step back and say, well, hey, if you'd have known that it was going to escalate all the way to covering all their rent, would you have agreed to it at that point? If you say no, then you know that you don't need to follow this behavior. Okay, so same thing, if I know that when I go down to get a can of tomatoes from the basement that I'm going to end up making dinner, make a decision if I'm really, that's something I would be willing to do again. And in my case, I don't mind it because I'm happy to make dinner, no big deal, or at least help out with dinner. So that's okay. But otherwise, keep in mind that someone might get you to try to be consistent. Don't feel obligated. You may even see this in terms of if a salesperson is calling you over the phone and they might get you to just start saying yes. Suddenly you find yourself saying yes over and over again. They're trying to get you to be consistent saying yes. Think about, well, is that something I'm really agreeing with? Do I need to stay with this? In terms of the next influence tactic, we talked about reciprocity. So we talked about this idea that if someone, maybe makes a large request to you, then makes a more moderate one, so this door in this face technique, that you should reciprocate and agree to it. The idea here is if you feel like it's a trick, or it's set up to be kind of something that's a trick, then don't feel obligated. So again, I went into purchase mattresses about this time last year, and I saw these huge prices for what the mattresses were. And then he was like, oh, well, these are 80% off. At that point, I knew that this was a trick because they could set these outlandish prices and then make it seem like they were really giving me these huge savings. At that point, I said, forget the original price. Let's focus on what's really going on. I'm not going to be tricked by that. Whenever I go to make a big purchase or look for services, one of the things I always am really interested by is that they always want to give you something at the beginning. Okay, so sometimes it's just a simple glass of water. Sometimes it's kind of some mini small swag bag kind of thing. At that point, I see that as kind of setting up this reciprocity. Okay, so hey, I gave you something. Now you should buy my services. Or I gave you a bottle of water. Now you should at least go out and see some cars with me. Okay. To some degree, I don't know if that's necessarily a trick. A lot of times it is just kind of being gracious and kind, especially in the summertime. But I also kind of keep in mind that they're setting up a reciprocity already. Okay, or someone says, oh, we spent a lot of time making this decision. You definitely should buy from me. Well, that's more of using it a trick rather than it being genuine reciprocity. Okay, if your roommate keeps asking you for help moving around and moving things, start to realize that maybe that's not genuine reciprocity. The next one we'll talk about is the idea of scarcity. And I think this is the hardest one to resist. And scarcity is the idea that when some resource is limited, that you have to get it now. Okay, there's a limited time window for doing something. And the idea here is that you have to calm down and ask, do you really want the item? Okay, so a lot of times if I'm making a larger purchase or one where I know scarcity could be involved, I actually build in a separate time in that interaction that I'm going to take a step aside and decide if I want the item. Okay, so I know when purchasing cars, I never buy them that same day. Okay, I always say, well, hey, it's been great working with you. I really appreciate it. I'm going home. Yeah, that gives me a chance to kind of take a step back, think about it, decide what I want to do, rather than feeling like this is scarce. So in fact, I had someone try to use a scarcity tactic on me, and here's a great example of this. It was the end of the day on a Friday. I looked at several cars. I said, well, we are interested in this one particular car, but we're going to go home and think about it. It was about 8 o'clock at night. The dealership closed at 9. And the salesperson said, well, I don't know if it's going to be there in the morning. I said, it's going to be there in the morning. Trust me, this car, I know it's been sitting on your lot. I've been tracking this thing. No one's going to come in the next hour and buy this car. So, it was a false sense of kind of scarcity. And so, it was something, again, where I could kind of calm down and think about this. Again, I told you guys this happened with our house. Someone said, hey, this is the second day it's been showing. I think it's a great price. It's a great house. These don't last that long. We had to calm down first. We didn't want to get caught up on that moment. And so that's an important defense against scarcity, is to calm down and think about it. But it is very, very tough to do, but something that, again, if you might be in this position, build in some time to be able to calm down and think about it. Social proof is also another example, another influence tactic. Again, reviewing the tactics, idea that you can be influenced by what other people are doing because so many other people are doing this. Okay, so we have positive social proof going on now of talking about cases where people are staying home and they're staying in. And they're protecting others by staying at home. This is social proof that kind of saying this is what other people are doing, so you should do it as well. But in some cases, we have to be careful because this tactic can be used, and maybe it's not genuine. So I'll give you a couple examples of this. One is that there was an ad for a while with Red Bull, and this made me really irritated with Red Bull. And they said 95% of doctors recommend Red Bull. And I'm thinking, like, how does that make sense? Like, Red Bull just, like, it's full of sugars and all kinds of stuff that kind of gets you overly excited and kind of puts you in this fight or flight response. This can't be something doctors are recommending. And then by the 5th time I watched the commercial, I saw this little bit of fine print at the bottom, and it said, recommend drinking diet Red Bull compared to regular Red Bull. And so it was this false social proof where it made it sound like 95% of doctors recommended drinking Red Bull. Well, really, it was just 95% of doctors recommended drinking a diet version of it compared to the full version of it, which makes sense. Every doctor would say that, right? Every doctor would say it's good to be careful what you're drinking, the calories and things like that. Another one I think that's really funny, you see this happen, they'll say, this is the #1 movie. And so you think, oh, everyone's going to see this movie. And I pay attention especially to kids' movies because I never know which ones are kind of really good ones or not. And you have to listen a little bit carefully because they'll say stuff like, this is #1 movie between the age demographics of 6 and 9 of kids that went to see the movie during a Wednesday afternoon when there was no school. Where it's like, okay, yeah, now we caught it. It's not real social proof. It's social proof in the fact that it has all these kind of caveats tied to it as well. So let me address the next kind of other ways to be resistant against this persuasion. Then I'll stop and give you guys a chance to ask any questions as we wrap this section up. Okay. This is the biggest one of all with resisting persuasion, is to think. And the problem with this piece of it is that it's oftentimes when you're in the moment or you're depleted, it's very hard to think. It's hard to think about what's going on. Okay, so we go to purchase a mattress, on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening after it's been a long week. It's hard to sit there and think about all the different tactics that are being used and, how these conversations are evolving. But keep in mind when you're in these positions that you need to stop and think about it. And in doing this and putting the thinking in, you're going to be less resistant or more resistant to the persuasive technique and understand it. Okay? Part of what we can do is think about how and why the tactic is working. Okay, so that's part of that thinking process. Why am I feeling obligated to buy this particular item? Okay, is it because this person spent a lot of time with me on it, so I feel like I have to? Is it because it's scarce or rare, or because I started thinking about this item and they're trying to keep me thinking about this item? How and why is this tactic working? Okay, so why am I being influenced into buying this gym membership? Okay, so gym memberships, I think, are the best ones because they use all kinds of influence techniques. In fact, if we had a little more time, I'd bring someone in from a gym who sells memberships and have them give you the sales pitch, because it's basically a flip book as they go through sometimes of sales tactics. Okay? You can ask the question, do I really want this? Am I doing it to please someone else? Okay, so this especially comes in when we think about reciprocity. Am I, helping this person move because I really want to? This is a person I enjoy supporting. Or is it because I feel kind of tricked into it? I think we've all had that moment where we're kind of like, I don't really want to help this person move. And, I feel like they're just kind of forcing me to do it. Or maybe they're taking advantage of kind of my nature of things. So I've had this happen where I was played softball, and I really didn't want to be the team captain. I really just wanted to come out and play. And I eventually got to the point where someone said, well, if you're not the team captain, we won't have a team. Okay, at that point, I knew what kind of persuasive message they were using. And I basically said, well, now I've, kind of forced into it. It's not something I really want to do, but I know why you're trying to use this tactic on me, kind of this scarcity almost. Another thing is wait a few hours. If the desire goes away, you probably don't need it. Okay, so this is if you're buying a particular item. Maybe you've gone out to go shopping for a pair of basketball shoes and suddenly you run into other shoes that you want. You can't decide if you want them. Maybe they're on sale, things like that. Wait a little bit, think. That gives you the chance to think, to have the resources to think. If the desire goes away, you probably don't need it. So I literally had this happen with a mini helmet that's sitting next to me. There was a guy selling this particular helmet, had a specific decal on it that I couldn't find anywhere else. Okay, so this was a scarcity issue. He wouldn't just sell me the decal. I had to buy the whole helmet, which was way overpriced for it. And so I said, well, hey, is it because it's a scarce item, because it's a rare item more specifically? Do I just want it because it's rare? And so I remember saying, well, it's not going to go away overnight. This guy wants to keep selling these things. So I said, okay, let's take a few days. And if it's still something that I want, if it's still meaningful to me, then I should get it. And after several days, I said, hey, I'm still thinking about it. It's still part of what I want to do. I was kind of going full send on building this thing. So I, in fact, then decided to get it. But it gave me a chance to kind of think about it and take a step back. I'll give you the last one that's probably my most favorite in terms of resisting persuasion, is you guys are now well-versed in terms of all the different influence tactics. You have a good fundamental understanding. There's nuances of these. They're kind of variations of these different 6 weapons of influence. But you guys understand it. And because of this, you can now point out the compliance tactic to the person who's trying to use it. Okay, so I hinted a bit before that salesmen at selling gym memberships are really the best at this. And I remember going to a gym in Jacksonville, and the guy basically gets out a flip book and he walks his way through it. And he's kind of going through it and going through it and going through it. And I go, every page that he's flipping through is a new social influence tactic. Okay, saying all the things that the gym does, all the offers the membership has. It goes from one price to another price midways through. Basically it's a script of social influence tactics. And what was really funny is I knew what he was doing, so I decided to use one back against him. So I decided to use the idea of pick technique. And so at that time, the idea of a BOGO was still new. So this idea of buy one, get one free was relatively new idea. Now it's kind of commonplace, but the terminology had just come out. And so I decided, well, hey, I'm going to mess with this guy a little bit. And so I said, well, hey, how about we do a BOGO? And he goes, I'll do you one better. I'll tell you what, you have to pay for your membership, but your wife is free. And I was like, well, that's perfect. That's exactly a BOGO. Okay. So it was really great. I actually did point out the compliance techniques. I was like, just so you know, you did a nice job. I'm a social psychologist. I watch people do these kind of sales tactics. He like totally freaked out. His eyes bugged out. He's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? We actually discussed like him coming to class and doing the sales pitch and then letting the class kind of break it down. We never quite got there, but again, this idea that you can kind of understand the compliance technique, it's kind of fun to point it back out. And of course, be polite with it. Be mindful of the fact that these are individuals who are doing their job, trying to help you make good decisions. So I want to pause at this point to see if there's any questions before I will actually walk us through our third writing assignment real quickly here. But questions about the content we talked about, the techniques, things like that. If you have a question, let me know. If you're all good, send me a message over chat. Just want to stop for a moment here, make sure we're all good. All right. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate you jumping in. Let me know how you're sitting. Okay, so for the sake of keeping us moving, what I can do is quickly show you the third writing assignment. So the third writing assignment is designed to process things a bit more. So for this assignment, okay, what I ask you to do is process the social influence tactic a bit more. For this in-class assignment, think about a time when a social influence tactic was used on you, or you used a social influence tactic. So either way. So what I want you to do is describe the scenario where the social influence tactic was used. Identify the tactic used and provide the brief definition, your own words. Okay. I want you to explain how the tactic was used. So walk me through that process step by step. So really highlight the steps that were in line with how that process was used. And regardless of whether you or the other person complied, discuss if that tactic was used successfully. Okay. So this will be posted on Carmen. It already is posted. It's in the video here. I also have this posted as part of the assignments on Carmen. So this particular prompt is posted several different places. What I want you guys to do is go ahead and make sure that you answer this by Sunday, April 5th by 5 o'clock. So I didn't want it to interfere with you guys working on the exam coming up, but I did also want to make sure we didn't have this dragging around for too long. So please make sure that you get this done by Sunday, April 5th. Again, I'll be evaluating it, making sure that you answer the question. And I'll look at it a little bit in terms of your writing. So is it easy to follow your writing, things like that. I think this would be a good exercise for you. You may want to do it before your exam to kind of practice with one of the techniques, things like that. But I didn't want to make it due during that. Okay. So we've now wrapped up talking about social influence. We spend lots of time on it because I think it's a great demonstration of social psychology. It's really important for you guys to know these things. Again, last pause to see if there's any questions before we're going to get into groups. All right, so jump in if you have a question. I am going to switch this over into talking about groups. So give me just a minute to change screens here.